Good evening, everyone. This is Jeff with Astroscoop, Deep Dive Astrology Coaching. It is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today is December 13th, Friday the 13th, 2024. I hope you're having a great day and a great night. And I hope it's not too spooky. Hope you had a wonderful Halloween and a wonderful Thanksgiving. And we're going to wait a few minutes to see if anyone pops in. I know some people were running late last week, so I will take my time as we talk about Sagittarius, the last period, the last decan of Sag, or Sage, as a lot of people like to say. Sage, Sag. Just add the E after the G. So this is Astroscoop. If you're new to my live streams are every week, usually Fridays, either at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They're normally at 7, but lately I've been doing 8. So Fridays, Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube at Astroscoop 3801 at 8 p.m. They're weekly. And then, of course, I have my videos. You can go on my channel, look at playlists, and pick what you'd like to watch. And don't forget to share the content, like, comment, subscribe. Definitely subscribe. Still about 80% of people are not subscribed. So please sign in to YouTube so you can sign in so you can subscribe to Astroscoop. I really appreciate it. Carolyn says, happy Friday the 13th. That's right. Another one. Yeah. All right. Welcome. And we're going to wait a few minutes just to see if anyone else comes in. And it is a super cold and dark evening here on the East Coast. Wow. And it was interesting because I had an errand to run. It was around 4:15 or 4:20, which is right before our sunset here on the East Coast. And it was blinding. The sun was blinding bright. It felt so good. So it was so cold out, but the heat from the sun felt so good through the window. And then by 4:45 or 4:50, it was dark. Like it was so quick. So that's interesting. That's the interesting part of this time of year in this hemisphere is how it, the day and the night, and how fast that night comes. But in the coming week, we will turn a page and we'll start gaining approximately a minute a day of lights. And some days it's a minute, then the next day it skips, and then we continue that. So we'll be getting more light soon, which is great. So it'll be a little more, it'll be later than 4:25. And for people that live like closer to Canada, if you live on that part towards the water, your sunrise is so much earlier there. I remember staying in Massachusetts years ago and waking up, and the sunrise was so early, and so just amazing time in winter here. So tonight we're going to talk about the last decan, the last week of Sagittarius, which is decan 3. Today's the 13th, so we're right in the middle of it. And next week we will start the winter solstice, which will begin Capricorn. And then, of course, starting around the 19th or 20th will be the Sagittarius Capricorn cusp, which we'll talk about next week. And I have some different ideas what to do. So if you have any comments or suggestions for my next couple of live streams, I'm kind of open right now. So please give me some fodder. So give me some information to work on. But I wanted to mention, I want to give another shout out to India, because India in the last 2 weeks has given me 30% of my views, which doesn't sound like a lot, but some of my videos are having hundreds of views at a pop. Many aren't, but some of them are. So when I consider 100 people, 30 out of 100 are from India, 60 out of 200, and so forth. That's a lot of people from India. So I really, really appreciate it, India. And this week, 54% of my views are from India. So the Indian astrological viewers, the young viewers, primarily male, are tuning into Astroscoop, which is great, which is wonderful. Please, share. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share the content so people can get the word out. And after India, we have Algeria at 7%. Go India, that's right. I know, isn't that amazing? I know, India is so enormous too. So if I could get more viewers from India, I wouldn't even need the United States. If you think of how many people are in India. And then Algeria, that's new, 7% of my views. The US comprises 6%. So thank you, United States. And next is the Philippines at 6%, Indonesia, 3%, Iraq is 3%, and then a couple other very obscure countries that are at like 1 or 2% of my views. So very interesting. India, Algeria, and the US are my top 3. So thank you to the Algerians as well. I don't think that's ever come up on my stats for YouTube, for Astroscoop. So we're growing slowly, but we're moving forward, which is wonderful. So if you caught my live stream last week or the week before, we talked all about Sag. We talked about Sagittarius 1, all about Jupiter. Sagittarius 2, Jupiter with the Mars sub-ruler, which is an Aries influence, and all about fire and all the celebrities. And tonight is the Sag 3 or Sage 3, and that's December 11th to the 18th or 19th, depending on the degrees and the year you're born. Now, when I was researching for this week, and I was looking at the celebrities and also thinking of people I've met that are born this week, it occurred to me that I mentioned last week that Sagittarius 2 people are very peculiar and very kind of almost eccentric and very unique, which they are. But Sagittarians born this week have a much more of a power about them. And you'll see what I mean when we go through the points. But there's definitely a power to these Sag people born between December 11th and the 18th or 19th. And it's not like a Scorpio power, it's fire, but it's a very, I put on my thumbnail, Colossus fire. It's colossal. It's like a gigantic statue, right? The Rhodes or anything from Greece. It's like that kind of mythology or symbolism. That's what I want you to keep in mind. Keep in mind a giant, a titan, colossal, right? Not just physically, but also psychologically, mentally, spiritually. Sag can be a spiritual sign. So all those things and how it differs from being a Sag that's born in late November or being a Sag that's born, let's say, December 1st or the 5th or something from second decan. So very, very interesting. And I've known more people born this week than I have from last week, because I mentioned the decan 2. I haven't met many Sagittarius people in my life, and I've observed some through working and acquaintances, but haven't known many family, friends, or otherwise. But this week I've known more Sag 3 people, and I've also been acquainted with the Sag 3 period. And this is a very interesting period as it comes right into that Sagittarius Capricorn cusp, the solstice cusp, which is also very powerful. And that's wonderful. So we'll talk all about the cusp energy next week, and then we'll go from there. So I do want to mention before we get started, you can donate to the channel via Venmo right here. Venmo at Astroscoop. You could just look up Jay. If you need help with that, if you want to donate to the channel, let me know. I can send you a link. I'm also on PayPal. It's hard to see, but I'm on PayPal as well. So Venmo or PayPal, if you ever want to donate to the channel for any reason or any content, any amount is greatly appreciated. I definitely want to grow the channel in 25. So it's not so much about the amount, it's about the thought and the intention. Get that energy moving forward and get that intention, those intentions going for 2025. So anything, please. So one of our viewers last week, I'm not sure if she's here, but she mentioned, actually a couple of people requested that I do the transits now in the beginning. It's 10 minutes in. Normally I do the transits 45 to 50 minutes into the live stream after we talk about the celebrities. So let's talk about some of the transits now. And then if we have time, we'll go over that. I'll reiterate that later. So where are we tonight? Well, we're very, very close. We're coming up on the waxing to the full moon. So the full moon is, tonight is Friday. I believe it's early Sunday morning because we're not full by degrees here. Here we have the sun at 22, and then we have the moon at 4 of Gemini. So we have an early Gemini moon right now. So it's opposed by sun, but not by degrees. So by Sunday morning, we will have, or actually late Saturday night into Sunday morning, will culminate in the full moon. And we'll have the Sag full moon in Gemini. And what's interesting is as that moon in Gemini moves through the weekend, it's going to not only oppose the sun, creating the full moon, the push-pull of air and fire, but it's also going to conjunct that retrograde Jupiter Gemini that is right here. So it's going to conjunct that, which is a lot of strong Gemini energy this weekend. And it's conjuncting the Gemini where Jupiter is retrograde. So this can make things really flaky and flighty. You know, I was at a store the other day and I had to use an app on my phone where I had to sign in. And it was a complete nightmare. Nothing worked. I tried all kinds of different things. I tried Wi-Fi. I tried cellular. I had to sign in. I had to get a code. I had to reset my password. I had to get another email. Then it was the wrong email. So it wasn't only my error, but the amount of steps that the universe was throwing at me and then throwing at the store was unbelievable. It took 45 minutes to do something that should have been like 8 minutes probably. So it was very, very flaky. But so things like that, not only because it's busy and it's Christmas season, store wasn't even that busy. So things like that will happen. And Mercury, of course, is also retrograde. Now the Mercury retrograde Sag is 6. It's 6 right here. So that is not going to oppose the Gemini moon. It is right now as we speak, but it's not opposing the full moon on Sunday. The degree will be too far away. So it's just opposing it by sign. But when you think about all this Sag and then the transiting Gemini, the outer transit, which is Jupiter, and then the moon, which moves every 2.5 days, we're talking about a lot of air and a lot of fire this weekend in a really, really short amount of time. So if you think about, people have this weekend and next weekend to shop and get ready for Christmas and the holidays. That's it. So tomorrow's already Saturday. And then if you order stuff through the mail, you have to get it soon. So you can imagine that kind of restless energy. And then Neptune is in Pisces, which is going to be a close square to both Sag and Gemini, because Pisces squares Sag and Gemini. So Gemini, Neptune, the sun, and then now Virgo. Now Virgo is just sitting quiet on the second house. There's no Virgo going on. But the second house cusp, or I'm sorry, third house cusp is 24 degrees, which is actually square the sun in Sag, and it will be square the full moon Sunday morning. So that's kind of interesting. So a lot restless energy here. And what there's a severe lack of, so if a baby was born tonight, he or she would have a very strong lack of earth. So with all this flighty, energetic, kind of masculine energy, we have the Uranus transit here at 24 of Taurus, that's retrograde. It's going back. So it was at 26, 27. Like I said, there's no Virgo. We just had Venus in Capricorn. Now Venus is at 7 of Aquarius, conjuncting Pluto, but it's moving away. It's waning. It's moving away. So it's not going to be powerful. It's by sign, yes. And then, of course, Venus is going to go into Pisces. Then it's no longer going to be a conjunction to Pluto. But that Pluto at 0 of Aquarius, which I'll mention again at the end of the hour, of course, it's going to take forever for these early fixed signs to start to get used to how that feels, having that Pluto at 0 on one of your personal planets, especially any of the early fixed signs at 0, 1, or 2 for now. And then in the coming years, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then in 19 years, if you have a 27, 28, 29 degree Aquarius planet, if you're almost a Pisces, Aquarius cusp planet, then that Pluto in 18, 19 years is going to conjunct that. So again, you have to think about where you'll be then. Will you be alive in 18 to 20 years? Some people will, some people won't. So that Pluto in Aquarius is pretty amazing. But like I said, the early fixed signs, just have to get used to it where it is in your chart. It's not, it's not necessarily good or bad. And that's not a flaky assessment. What that means is you decide how to use it. If it shakes your love relationship up or your marriage and it causes you to rethink about things, rethink your values and be altruistic. The Pluto in Aquarius is going to teach everyone in the world to be more altruistic and less selfish. So altruism, that can only be a good thing for the world, right? Thinking of others, thinking of the earth, thinking of animals, and thinking of the group, and not just the ego and not just what's best for me, what's in it for me. The world has to get away and got to get out of that ego. So that's a very interesting thing. So again, it's not good or bad, it's how you use it. Now, if someone has an early Aquarius planet, specifically Aquarius, like even a 29 degree Capricorn or 0, 1, or 2 Aquarius for the conjunction, that is going to be potent, powerful, and personal. So depending on where it is in your chart, depending on what age the person is, you're going to have to look at that with cycles of a Saturn return or a Uranus aspect or a Jupiter or a Neptune transit. If someone's 27, 28, or 29 right now, and they're not 30 yet, they're going through their Saturn return or coming up on it, you'd have to take that into consideration, especially if it was an early Aquarius person that was 28, 29, or 27. The 30-year-olds are done with it. The 1994 peeps are done. Karen says, thanks for reviewing the stats first. You're welcome, Karen. Yeah. I've been meaning to do that because I know sometimes people come and go, and sometimes people pop in, and then towards the end they pop out and pop in again. So, but I'm gonna do that. So, it's very interesting. And the Leo planets, I saw a post from an astrologer on X, and she has a really, really strong following. She's a spiritual psychic astrologer, and she's extremely blunt. I believe she's a triple Sagittarius. Speaking of Sag, which we're going to talk about, but she said that get ready for the Leo planets to be dethroned. So, she said that not very mildly. So, in other words, destroy that ego. And I'm not picking on Leo. Any of us can have a big ego, and we can have any sign in the chart, and we can choose to misuse it, or be narcissistic, or just feel or think with our ego. And we know sometimes we just have to get over ourselves. I know I have to get over myself sometimes and get out of my own way to move forward. Often our biggest stumbling blocks is right here. It's not really anybody or anything in front of us. That's always a factor. So be good to yourself. But the Leo planet will be dethroned. It will be modified. It will be humbled. That's a good thing. And that doesn't mean all early Leo people are, egotistical and full of themselves. No, but the early planets, the 0, 1, 2 Leos getting the opposition, especially if it's Sun, the Sun opposition Pluto, that will transform their identity, their ego. And then it may introduce to a Leo planet. The way I look at it is, if a Leo planet has the tendency to be selfish, yet giving, to be self-involved, yet generous. Leos are both. Leos are self-involved, but generous. It's just going to give, the Pluto is going to give Leo the impetus to be more selfless, more altruistic. That's a good thing. And it may warm up depending on where the Aquarius person has Leo in the chart. They'd have to look at that push-pull. Because if the Aquarius person lacks fire, their lesson maybe they need more ego. Maybe they need to be stronger in a sense. And then, of course, that Pluto in Aquarius is hitting the early Taurus people for a square and the early Scorpio planets with a square. And I mentioned 2 or 3 weeks ago that I know many people in my friends and family circle that have early fixed placements, including myself, that's going, and we're all going through that Pluto. Almost everyone I know has at least one personal planet, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, one of those that's getting hit from the early Pluto. So, but I look at it like a class. It's there. You wake up some days and guess what? I don't want to go. I don't want to go to class, or I don't want to deal with it. But you have to, and you have to deal with yourself. So when you wake up, it's like, okay, all right, this is what Pluto's bringing. This is the mood of the day. This is the vibration. Let's see what we can do with this. But it's if it's Pluto, it's powerful, it's strong, and it's going to be lasting. So that can be good, but it can also be a lot of growing pains. I've noticed a few people with early Scorpio planets that are 0, 1, or 2, that Pluto hitting their planets, hitting their Sun, Moon, Mars. Oh, it's a sting. It's a sting for them. They are changing. And again, it depends on where they are. I know one man who just finished his Saturn return, he just turned 30 in October. So he's all done with the Saturn, but he's a 0-degree Scorpio. So the Pluto's right on his Sun. And he has been completely transformed through his work and through other activities. He's in a basketball league and he's doing other stuff. So he's maturing and he's growing up, but he's had serious growing pains for a 30-year-old. So again, it depends on where you are. I know other people that might be in their 40s and they have that Pluto a square. Again, that's a different time. If you're 35, if someone's 35 or around 42, 49, they're close to a Saturn hit. 56 to 60 is the second Saturn return. And so people that are coming up on that, they're going to have to deal with that, possibly in addition to a Pluto opposition or square. So just amazing, truly amazing stuff. And it's really exciting to be alive in this time. Think of everyone that's alive that's able to understand this. Everyone from, let's say, teenagers and up, like 14 and up, 14 to 100. It's just an amazing time of what we're seeing in the cosmic sky here, and obviously in the world. And that's why you see so many different astrologers. I've seen this resurgence of astrologers of all ages seem to be firing on all cylinders. So not only are astrologers excited about all of this, but this is it's in and out and out and in. So it's astrologers getting energy from their audience, and then it's also this inner work that we're doing. If you're in touch with it and you know what it is, the inner work we're doing to move forward and to try to find our paths, you know, where we want to go. And again, a lot of that has to do with age and the cycles, like we talk about. And also, if anyone has kids or grandkids at those cycle ages, 7, 14, 21, you know, if you have any kids or grandkids around there, you'll know, you know, if you have a boy or girl, it's almost 14, you'll know that they have some attitude. It's both good and bad. It's more identity. It's more Uranus. It has to happen. And also the 19, 20, and 21-year-olds, that's a time where it's like, hey, I'm not a kid anymore. I can't listen to my mom and dad all the time. And there's going to be those little battles with parents or people. They might be small, they might be big. And then, you know, the 7 or 8-year-old kid is now formed. So a 7 or 8-year-old is who they are. They're just gonna develop, but they're who they are. Now a 4 or 5-year-old is not really formed yet. And then of course the 28 to 30 crowd, which I mentioned before, they're doing their Saturn return right now. The Saturn and Pisces crew, tonight it's at 13, and of course it's direct, which is good. Thank goodness. I mean, we need those Pisces planets. You know, obviously we'll get to Pisces in late February, but Pisces is like, Pisces planets are so, they could be so not even heavy, just like a wet blanket. You know, Pisces planets can be amazing, but they can be so melancholy. And to have them in the outer planets when they're retrograde in alignments with other planets, it just sometimes it's just like, oh, we got to get out of it's got to stop raining, got to get out of the puddles, so to speak. But that's definitely Pisces thing. So yeah, that's a lot going on. And of course, tons retrograde: Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, the node in Aries, and Mercury are all retrograde. And like I said, all the stuff people doing this month with the, you know, the mail and buying stuff online, just be really, really careful with your passwords and all that stuff. Just be really, really careful. And wait a month or two maybe to do major stuff, like to buy a car or sign contracts or documents. Maybe just wait a little bit. I'd rather see it go into Mercury into Capricorn and not be retrograde, and not have all this additional retrograde energy, especially Mars too, the Mars in Leo. It's like that Mars in Leo has just stopped. So it's like the Leo performers that we know, or the Leo planets we know, they're all performers in some way. They're kind of like, whoop, they're on pause. Or at least the early ones are. They're definitely on pause, especially the natal Mars in Leo people. Okay, so now we can get into the Sagittarius time. So we're looking at Sagittarius 3, or Sage 3, which is December 11th to the 18th or 19th. And of course, today is the 13th. So we're at 22 degrees of Sag tonight on December 13th, 2024. So we have about 6.5 degrees left of Sag. And that's not much. And then, of course, around the 19th or 20th, depending on the year, is the cusp, where we go from late Sag into Capricorn and we start the solstice. So this is a really, 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 really fun and positive and substantial kind of transition. And since I've done this channel, in the beginning, most of my videos really struggled to get any views, which is typical. But one video that did well very early on with hardly any audience was my Sagittarius cusp video. And then any subsequent content with Sag and Capricorn. Maybe there just happens to be a lot of Sag Capricorn cusp people. But I will definitely do another video for that and a live stream. I'm going to do probably a lot of cusp content coming up, because people really seem to love it, especially people from other countries. So we'll just keep doing it, that kind of thing. But here we have the sun. So Jupiter for Sag is now in the sun decadent. So this throws a whole nother monkey wrench into these Sagittarius people. So remember I mentioned at the beginning, power. So the sun is hot, vibrant power. And that's what we think of when we think of Leo. Just mentioned Leo planets. So this is a Sagittarius person that has the influence of the sun in a late degree. And the sun aspect of it, or the sun part of it, really, the Sagittarian people I've born that I've known this week have had an especially grand, it's grand ideas, magnificent. I don't even know how to explain it. The way they think of things, the way they think of goals, projects, schemes, endeavors, travel. I've never met people like this week. It's like they're gods and goddesses. It's like god and goddess archetype. Like it's like we're back in ancient times, and they want to like create a village. When a Sagittarius 3 person says they're going to write something, or they're going to write a song, or they're going to, if they're a builder, they're going to build something, or a contractor or something, they often will overestimate themselves way a lot. They can I mentioned that in the last 2 decades, how Sagittarius can hit the mark because they're shooting for the stars and they have these big projects. But in this decan, the sun says to them, hey, not only do I want goals and I want to hit the mark, but I want to be recognized for it. And I want to have a heck of a lot of achievement and fun with it. And so whether that's ego or not depends on the person. And it also depends on if they have additional fire or other Sag in the chart. I know one gentleman born this week that he has so much going on in his life, so many projects. It's unbelievable. I don't know how he juggles them and manages them. Now, he doesn't necessarily follow through on all of them, or maybe he doesn't do all of them to the extent, the quality that he might want to. But the sheer guts of him coming up with this stuff, even if he's afraid, coming up with that, and it's just interesting. And I had a friend in college that was born on 13th, same thing. He said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. One time he said, you know what, I'm going to create a demo record and I'm going to become, I'm going to get on the radio in Europe. And I was like, really? Okay. And he never did anything. 15 years later, he had a song somewhere on some radio station in Europe. So, it's things like that. This is Sag. It's both. It's Sag is like a sign to admire, but you also, for those of us that aren't Sag, you kind of look and go, whoa, like I don't get it. Where is that coming from? So this arrow, the Sag 3, you got that arrow, and then you have the strength and fortification of the sun with that little bit of a Leo influence. So these are big, big people. They could be physically big or small, but they are imposing. Every single person I've met this week, there's something very solid and almost muscular and physical about them. I've known people that were 5'5" born this week. I've known people that were 6 feet. They're all presence. They have presence. I don't know what it is. They have the strong thighs. They have the elongation of the Sagittarius. And then the addition of the sun. They usually have a strong face. Of course, it depends on what they have rising. But Sag people born this week have that fortification of the sun. And the grand ideas are, their ideas are so big that most other signs look and say, oh, yeah, I could do that, but that might not be possible. For a Sag 3, they're not even questioning it. For the most part, the energy is so self-assured that they've already completed it in their mind. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to actually complete it, but in their mind, they're so self-assured between the Jupiter and the sun that that they can accomplish it. Now, that would also go for in a natal chart if you had a Jupiter Sun aspect. And it doesn't have to be in Sag or a fire sign, obviously. You could have Sun conjunct Jupiter in Gemini. And it would take on this kind of grand Sagittarius flavor, but it would be brought about in the other sign, obviously. It would be modified by that sign. So you could, if you had a Sun Jupiter aspect. And so, you know, anyone with major strong Jupiter aspects in their chart, they're also going to be big, grand people that are going to sometimes do foolish things or fall on their face or go way overboard with things. I mean, it's just a given with Jupiter. It's an absolute given. So these people they're a thunderbolt. You know, it's like Zeus. They are just full of it. They're full of enthusiasm. Now, most Sagittarius people are, but people born this week have a special zest. And that thunderbolt, when it's positive, is so much fun. I've had a lot of fun with people born this week, going out, traveling. They are a ton of fun. But again, they can be way too much to handle, very hard to handle. And that thunderbolt can often get stormy. So often Sagittarius people don't deal with the reality of limits. So here's a really good hack for Gemini Sag. If you're a Gemini, I know Karen, you're a Gemini. If you're a Gemini, you're opposite of Sag. If you're a Sag, you're opposite of Gemini. Similar but different. But the hack is Sag and Gemini. That I think I mentioned it last week. It's like restrictions. Restrictions are really, really hard to endure in life, unless there's a lot of other softening placements in the chart, a lot of earth and water or soft aspects, or you were just brought up to be more patient and you know, more well-adjusted, that sort of thing. But in general, that thunderbolt, the restrictions, if a Sagittarius gets moody and they have a lot of restrictions or feel trapped or cooped up, look out, because that fire, that thunderbolt is swift. It's like Zeus. It's amazingly fast. I've seen Sagittarius people get mad or just frustrated or upset in like the blink of an eye. And then not too long after that, they're right back to their cheerful self. But it's scary. It can be scary when it lasts. But again, that's a god or a goddess type of energy. It's a mythological. That's why the fixed stars, you know, have meaning for some of the symbolism. But there's definitely elements in a Sagittarius, a late Sag, that can be moody, because Sagittarius often has a cheerful mask that hides some of the more heavier elements of their personality. So that's something they can grapple with that can be tough. So it would behoove them to be on an even keel more often, to try to be more even keel. I mentioned last week that moderation is not necessarily a word for Sag. And again, a lot of it depends on other placements. If your Jupiter's in an earth sign, if the Sagittarius person had a Jupiter in Taurus or a Jupiter in Capricorn, that's going to be a lot more practical. It's going to be a little slower, patient. If their Jupiter is in an earth house, that's going to ground it more. If it's in the second house, sixth house, 10th house, or on the midheaven, you know, with career. So there's a lot of things that can temper it. But it's interesting because when you're an astrologer and you look back at all your family and friends and all the people you've dated and all these people you've known in your life, and if you have a good memory and you can place them and you remember their chart, it's just amazing how it works. I'm just waiting for it not to work. But it never doesn't work to some extent where you wouldn't feel the value in it. Oh, thank you, Jermaine Jackson. Very cool. All right. So it's definitely a lesson for all Sagittarius people, is to moderate. A lesson. And you know, I was thinking tonight that if a Sagittarius person was here, they might be offended by that and say, "What are you talking about?" Well, maybe you're boring like me. Maybe you're boring because you don't want to go too far. You want to be more on an even keel. But that's not what I mean. I don't mean I admire the risk that Sagittarius planets take. I admire that. It's amazing. And I mentioned last week how Sagittarius can really inspire. Sagittarius is a wonderful addition to any group or gathering, a Sagittarius person, for the most part. They're just great because of the mutability, that energy, that spark, the laughter. Oh, people born this week, oh my gosh, the laugh is just as grand and just as big, like almost like Santa Claus, like a god, like just heavy and ebullient. So again, that thunderbolt, positive, negative, depends on how even are they on an even keel. Are they accomplishing what they want to accomplish? Do they feel trapped? Do they feel restricted? That's really a big indicator of how happy Sagittarius is, and Sagittarius placements as well, especially Moon or Mars too. So self-assured, I mentioned, absolutely naturally self-assured. It comes from the sun as well, but the big blind spot here is like a giant, like BFG, the big friendly giant. There are huge blind spots in the ego or the vision, about what's around you. And they can often be very unaware of their presence and some of this incredibly strong, powerful energy of what they're doing to others or to themselves, and what they're doing with it. And sometimes their energy is so potent and goal oriented that they see anyone, even someone trying to help them or keep them safe, to slow down even in the slightest bit as a restriction. There's a fine line there of being safe and then not sabotaging someone and just letting someone do what they want to do, letting them be free. So there's a fine line there. If you're a parent of a Sagittarius person, you want to keep them safe, but that Sagittarius planet, that kid with those Sagittarius planets is going to do wild stuff. So we try to get along with everyone in the room, no matter the size. I like that. There you go. Yeah. Oh, isn't that funny? And he mentioned size. What did I just say? Presence. Presence. And this also goes, I'm going to do a live stream on the rising signs, and I'll talk about Sagittarius rising celebrities, because Sagittarius rising people have some of this. It's not a planet in Sag, it's different because it's the outer mask. But yeah, if the rising signs have a lot, can often display some of this, but there can be unaware because of that giant mythology, Goliath, giant, and the god Rhodes. So I mentioned before the Greek reference there. Those are all symbols for Sagittarius in general, but it's specific to this week with the fixed stars, and it's very, very interesting. And the women I've known on this week, same thing that I've noticed physically. Most of them are either average height or smaller or shorter, but also very potent and something very strong about them. And I know I knew two Sagittarius people born this week. I can pick out the 12th and 13th, and both of them have Scorpio rising. So they were both Sagittarius 3 with Scorpio risings. I mean, absolute powerhouse charts. So, I mean, there's a lot to look at there. But this week, this sums it up. Idealistic visions. That's what they're all about. All this big stuff and all the goals and everything. You can't tell a Sagittarius person that certain things are impossible, because that's just going to fire them up. So maybe they like to hear that. I know there's got to be people on X and Instagram, especially some of these crazy health people, that as soon as people tell them, this is all false or you can't do this, then they do a thread that's like 10,000 words and tell you how it is. I would love to know how many of them are Sagittarius. I'll bet there's a lot. But idealistic visions, and again, is that good or bad? It depends. Now, visions can be literal or metaphorical. It could be vision for the future, the goals, practical visions. It could be When we get to the cusp of Sag and Cap, there's potential psychic ability there. There's going to be Sagittarius people here that are so strong and savvy that they're not going to believe in that necessarily. They're not going to believe in it, and they may not believe that they possess it, but they can develop it. Absolutely. They have very strong hunches, and they're very keen. They're very, very keen. If you've ever made a Sagittarius person mad or offended them, it's not often that they get nasty that I've seen, but they will come back and counterpunch with a sarcastic, blunt, line or something that will just hit you, and you'll go, whoa, okay, maybe I deserve that. But it's a Sagittarius kind of thing, the way they do it. It's very interesting. That's right. SOS Bible possible. Spot on. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. So, those idealistic visions, again, I've been in awe of Sagittarius people, and especially people born this week. Every sign, every astrological period has these gifts that teaches the other signs, and other signs secretly admire, may not always say it. Sometimes our opposite, we're frustrated because we want to be, there's a lot of water sign people that marry fire signs. I've known so many couples where they're a Cancer or a Pisces. Now, why do you think they marry a Sagittarius, Aries, or a Leo? Especially water sign woman marrying an Aries sign man. Well, a lot of it depends on what's in your chart. But if you think about the introversion and the sensitivity of a water sign in a woman, maybe that secretly hasn't tapped into that flamboyance or that confidence that she wants to have, well, she marries a man that has it. He has it, and it rubs off on her. By the same token, if he wishes he were more quiet, he was able to be more introverted, more calm, more steady. Well, he doesn't marry another fire sign, he marries a water sign to soften him, to put out the fire or take the hot fire and make it cooler, kind of thing. So it's really interesting like that. And the Sagittarius people born this week absolutely need people with a little water and a little earth in their charts to moderate, and maybe air. Depends on, Gemini and Sag can be that they can vie for projects and action, so they can do it all together or they can do it apart. But it really depends. So subordinate trouble. So what does that mean? Well, if a Sagittarius 3 person born this week has to spend a lot of time with another strong personality in the zodiac, like like an Aries 1 or an Aries 2, or a Leo 2 or a Leo 3, a Capricorn 1, maybe even an Aquarius 1 or 2. The Sagittarius person is going to secretly hope that you take a subordinate role to them, and that they get to rule. And it's not necessarily rule you. They want to just rule like the action. They want to rule what's going on, their projects and their goals. And they want you to kind of be a part of it. So it's hard for them to take a subordinate role to you. And that causes trouble with people, because as cheerful as Sagittarius can be, and as, and as smart and sharp, they're often right with their very sharp observations. It would behoove them to learn that lesson of sometimes you have to subordinate yourself and be equal, or just be equal. Look, I'm a Titan, you're a giant, we can be together. We're not going to agree, we're going to clash, but I respect your power, and and I respect your power, that kind of thing. But these people, particularly the 11 to 18, they're going to have to, in a close space, a business partner, a work partner, or a spouse, they're going to have to be with someone that's going to be most likely more flexible and easygoing than they are in general. Otherwise, it probably won't work, because The time I've spent with people born this week, and of course there's a dynamic with my chart, but the time I've spent with people born this week is just like it's just doses. I can do doses, and they could probably just do doses with me. So that's the dynamic that you have with everybody. It's a different, it's about doses, a dosage, right? Sort of thing. So I mentioned the opposite is Gemini 3. That's has to do with projects and stress. You know, the opposite signs in the zodiac, the axis of Gemini and Sag, it's opposites attract. It's tense. There's a learning. It's always a learning quotient with opposite signs. It's not always negative, but you have to have enough bumps, or like rams. You have to have enough headbutts to start learning and to get the goodness out of your opposite that has some of those traits that you lack. So it kind of rubs roughly at first, and then if you start to learn a lesson or learn something from them that you want to learn, then it's a good thing. And that's Gemini 3, and that was Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. You know, their partnership in music and you know, pop culture. Dean was a Gemini and Frank Sagittarius. And we're going to talk about Frank in a moment. But all this, you know, all this late Sag energy, part of the reason why I think it's so powerful is because it's coming much closer to that cusp period, which is going to be Sag and Capricorn, which is going to be the Archer or Centaur, along with now the Sea Goat and the Goat of Capricorn. And, you know, we talked about Capricorn last year. You know, the Capricorn sign, energy, placements, something that can often be misunderstood or maybe even underestimated, because Capricorn is pretty layered. There's got a lot of layers there. So when you combine the late Sag with Capricorn, that creates a whole different kind of strength and power. So that's why I think late Sag going into the cusp is really, really interesting. But that addition of the sun is, you know, every fire sign has a sun decan. You know, when we were in Leo, the first Leo decan is double sun, and then Aries has it for Aries 2. So again, when you combine those, you know, those planets or that God energy, God or goddess energy, it magnifies it, slows it down. Again, it depends on those placements in the chart too. So I would look at, in a Sag person's chart here, I would look at their Jupiter placement, and I would also look at the houses for their Sun and Jupiter and see if there's any aspects between Sun and Jupiter. So that sort of thing. And I've also seen in a lot of charts that I've read, I've also seen a lot of Mars-Jupiter aspects that can sort of behave like this, especially a late degree, over 20 degrees of Sag, can be quite wild and unrestrained. So, you know, they used to say in astrology books years ago that many astrologers have said that Sagittarius is the most marriage-shy sign of the zodiac. Now, that's kind of a simplification, but I think in general, the essence of Sag, that's probably true. Out of all the 12 signs, you know, again, but marriages are different. You know, modern day marriages are it's not one template. You know, people have all sorts of different rules and templates for their marriages. Some people have much more open marriages, or, you know, sort of thing. So there are levels where a Sagittarius person now may not feel as restricted as they might have 50 or 60 years ago, kind of thing, especially, and a Sag planet too, especially the moons, Venus or Mars as well. So there's a lot to look at there. But yeah, this Sag energy, this has been like a wild month here. And I'm Sag, my wife is Gemini. Oh, look at that. Awesome. 11/22. Yeah. Yeah, I have a family member who's November 23rd, very early Sag. And he is very, very funny, but he has a quietness about him. So he's funny to a point, and then he gets quiet and lays back, and that's the Scorpio part. And he observes. So that's the difference. That's how you know that's how you can tell a cusp person. Is a cusp person will display a very sharp characteristic of one of the signs, and then they'll quickly, or not so quickly, they will retreat. If one of the signs on the cusp is more introverted or reserved, they'll often not fully express that trait, um, sort of thing. So that's why cusp people are so interesting. All right, so let's see. Oh, wow, it's almost 9. So what I did for tonight for Friday the 13th, I didn't do any more Friday the 13th factoids or anything. I know we did that a couple of months ago. I didn't really have time to do that, and I figured with all this, that would have been another separate live stream. So I picked 13 Sag celebrities, 13 Sag celebrities that are born this week. Most of them are born this weekend for these degrees. They're like going to be 20, 21, 22, or 23 degrees of Sag. And they are going to, I think, exemplify the giant colossus sort of energy. And you got to remember, when you have this kind of energy in an astrological chart, now, does this mean that all these people are big people or loud people or no, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean in their own world, even if a musician is super shy, he or she's going to be in their studio and they might create grand, magnificent, soundtracks. But they're not like that in real life. They're not like that with people, but they will certainly inject that into their projects. It will be there. There's no way. You can't hide the Jupiter and the Sun. There's no way. And that's also for like athletics, martial arts, wrestling, I would say basketball. Like, I mean, you can't hide that. You can't hide that grandness and that energy. It's going to come out somewhere, definitely. So first we have Academy Award winner Christopher Plummer. He received that at 82. And he was in The Sound of Music, along with other major old school kind of classic movies. Christopher Plummer has just truly unique, very powerful presence physically, the smile, sparkle in his eyes, and just a great all-time, actor that really, really exemplifies Sagittarius 3, and commanding too. This one is a little controversial. Ted Nugent, the gun activist and rocker, hard rocker from the 70s and 80s. Now, I'm not mentioning these people. Just because I mention them doesn't mean that I think in real life that they're wonderful people. They may or may not be. But these are people that I think they stand for this kind of energy. It might be negative, but they definitely are typical of using some of this energy. Again, the thunderbolt can be positive or negative, how you use it. But Ted Nugent, unquestionably, he's one of the best guitarists in rock, and his music is incredibly fiery, his stage shows, and he's incredibly controversial in real life. Most people know about that. A lot of people hate him. And but a lot of that is on purpose. He likes attention. He likes his opinions, and that's Sagittarius. Next is Morris Day. Morris Day from The Time. Now, this is in Prince's world. So in the late 70s and 80s, Prince, the artist formerly known as from Minneapolis, Prince formed a teenage band, and Prince was the micromanager, control freak, and he got all these musicians from his neighborhood. One of them was a teenager named Morris Day, who played drums for him. And then Morris became a part of his band, and then he created The Time, where he said, Morris, you're going to be the lead singer. So then Morris Day at The Time, who he still performs to this day, he went on to do, acting. And Morris Day is an absolute character. I mean, one of the biggest characters. But he's so smart. He's such a good businessman. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's sharp. And but he's such a Sag. He's got the swagger, the fire, and he's really fun. Next, we have Frank Sinatra. Born in 1915. Frank Sinatra is probably the biggest giant on this list. Now, not physically. Physically, he was not, but he was born 12/12. There's a lot of interesting numerology there. 12/12/1915. And Frank has sold over 150 million records. And when you look at Frank's chart, Frank Sinatra has, I mean, his chart is chock full of stuff. But what's so interesting about him as a fire sign is he had Sun and Fire. He's a Sag 3. And then he also had, let me just check here. Let's see here. So he had a natal Mars in Leo at 27, and then the midheaven. So Frank had so much showmanship. He had the Mars in Leo, and he also had the midheaven in Leo, which is his career and public standing. But the interesting thing about Frank is he was a much deeper guy and an incredibly well-accomplished classical musician. He learned to read music, which he couldn't do normally. He had all sorts of physical ailments and problems. And then, of course, he got involved in all sorts of controversial stuff, the mob and, women and all sorts of weird stuff. But his chart shows so much talent. He had the Sun and Mercury in Sag, all that Leo, but then he had the moon in Pisces and Jupiter, which is his planet. Remember I said for every Sagittarius planet, you got to look to Jupiter. He had Jupiter in Pisces. So that's wildly different than the Sag. But he had so much faith and belief in himself that he was going to be a giant. I don't think there was any question in his mind that he would be one of the biggest people and most well-known people in music in his century. I don't think he had any, and he had a lot of failings too. He started and almost quit, and then he got popular when he was in his 20s, and then he declined. He got popular, declined, and then he became a household name. So the determination of Sagittarius and the goals to keep shooting, that's the thing. Not only did he have energy, but he had that special spark of Sagittarius that just doesn't stop. So it's not just perseverance or relentlessness. It's just like this. I have to keep doing projects. I have to keep scheming. I have to keep rolling the dice. That's Sagittarius is rolling the dice. So anyone that has a Sagittarius planet, there's going to be the let's roll the dice and see what happens kind of thing to that. And whether that's good or bad, it depends on what the material is that you're rolling on. And then next we have Grover Washington Jr. He's one of the biggest jazz saxophonists of all time. His music has been, sampled by hip hop people and very, very, very influential. Cy Curnin, he's one of my favorite singers. He's from The Fix, a song called Saved by Zero. One thing leads to another from the 80s. Obscure. They're a little more obscure new wave band now, but had a lot of hits. And he often, he like Morris Day, is very much a character, although he's very much more serious. But he does these things. I've seen him in concert, and he does these things with arrows, and he'll often do this. He'll often do these kind of thunderbolt Zeus kind of like physicality. He was a drama student as well. So he does that kind of stuff. I mean, this is what Sag does. Nostradamus also, that speaks for itself. That's number 7. Number 8 is Elliot Easton. He's a lesser known guitarist, but he's from the Cars, the original Cars from the 70s and 80s. And he's an incredibly underrated songwriter and guitarist. I mean, what he did in the Cars is amazing. And the Cars were as big as the Talking Heads, Blondie, REM, all that stuff. So amazing. Number 9, Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire. Earth, Wind and Fire, one of the biggest funk soul bands of all time, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and they're still touring today with some of the same members. Of course, we lost Maurice several years ago. But Maurice White, another thing, the amount the amount of the prodigious amount of songwriting he did for Earth, Wind, and Fire is staggering. The amount of albums and the design and the spirituality and he was into astrology. Um, just, I mean, like, where does that energy come from? That's what I wonder. And then number 10, we have Jack Hughes from Wang Chung. Everybody have fun tonight. Fun. Number 11 is Eddie Kendricks, another very poignant kind of soul person that was very Sagittarius in his music. Number 12 was Tycho Brahe, or Brahe, and he was he was an astronomer and did some astrological-ish things with stars. And I believe it was with, I think it was with Kepler. I believe he was with Kepler. So definitely astronomy, astrology oriented. And there was a little more of the spirituality there too as well. Number 13, I have Robert Wahlberg. And yes, Robert Wahlberg is a family member of Mark Wahlberg and Donnie Wahlberg. He's the older brother. So all the Wahlbergs are in entertainment. But Robert, who I forgot the last 2 years, he was also in, I think, Mystic River, The Departed. So he's been in movies with his brother Mark. Marky Mark is probably the most well-known. And then Donnie's done a lot, obviously, with his music, with New Kids on the Block and all that stuff. So the Wahlbergs are all over the place. But he's also another Sag. And then for good measure, I put in number 14, Paul Rogers, who is the lead singer of a rock group named Bad Company from the 70s and 80s primarily, and 90s. And he has one of the best, most rock singers have said he has one of the best, most smooth voices in rock. And his music is kind of more bluesy. So there's more of that quiet fire, but it's unmistakable. You know, especially the Sagittarius people born this week, unmistakable because of that sun influence. Really, 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 really interesting. Bad Company. All right, so we kept all that, and I had some more. I was going to do another sheet of celebrities, but I think will do. Let's take a look at, for anyone that didn't hear, let's look at the transits again. Yeah, so we don't have much Earth right now. So if a baby were born tonight, a baby would have that retrograde Uranus Taurus planet, which the whole generation of people have. Every baby has born this year has that. So it would depend on if it's making any aspects to any other planets. But there's no Virgo except on a house cusp, and there's no major Capricorn. So this is energy right now that it's not necessarily the energy in the sky right now is not, it's not incredibly grounded. So this energy that's kind of flying around, you know, I saw a guy the other day on the highway, and he was in this souped up sports car, like from the Fast and Furious movies. And it was a crowded part of the highway. There wasn't a lot of space, 3 lanes. And he was doing probably at least 120 or 130 miles an hour. It literally looked like something out of a movie. And so I hear this sound, and this guy goes, just a flicker, like peripheral vision, and then like 3 state cops trying to catch up to him. So that, you know, I mean, obviously that happens all the time, and people drive crazy. But, you know, Mars retrograde in Leo is halting the fire. But, you know, you got to wonder, like the chart of that person driving that car, you know, wouldn't that be priceless to look at his or her chart and look at that transits and what's happening with that person's Mars? I mean, there's no way it wouldn't illuminate something very interesting. But we have a lot of fire right now. Again, it's not as grounded as it could be. And all the Sag here, including Mercury that's retrograde, it's all ruled by Jupiter and Gemini, which is super restless. So it's not that Gemini and Sag can't be grounded. That's not what I'm saying. Sag and Gemini are sharp, and you might know what side what side the butter is on your bread. But it's like just a lot of pops right now. It's just pops of sparks of energy. And because there's no Virgo there, there's no major Virgo. You know, Virgo would help to inhibit, which could be a positive or negative to Gemini or Sag. Virgo would be an inhibited energy to all this kind of restless, maybe flighty or ungrounded energy. It could inhibit it. So that could be good or bad. And of course, we're not going to have any transiting Virgo or major Virgo for a while. We will have that Mars and Leo go direct, and then Mars will go into Virgo. So we will have that. And then, of course, we don't have the Capricorn, but next week we will have the Sun going into Capricorn. Pluto is now done. Pluto was in Capricorn forever, and that's done. Venus was just in, Venus was in Capricorn, it's in Aquarius. And so we'll be talking more about how that Capricorn energy will help to kind of balance out all the rest of this. And another thing is, with all this flighty kind of energy going on right now, Libra, there's nothing going on with Libra either. So I'm wondering how Libra planets feel, because the Libra planets, I feel like so many live streams I'm talking about when I look at Libra, with the exception of late September when we entered the Libra ingress, the Libra planets are almost like just laying low. Especially the Sun in Libra, Moon in Libra, and Libra rising people. And I know a couple people on X that I follow that are Libra rising. And, so the transit there is just on the house cusp. It's just going around and around every couple hours, but it's not doing anything major because there isn't going to be anything until Mars will go into Libra eventually. And of course, Libra doesn't happen until next year. So the Libra planets, which is Venus, in the transit is Venus and Aquarius, but the Libra planets are kind of just laying low. So that's interesting. And tonight, the Taurus and Scorpio polarities, those are hidden. Those are intercepted, and they're hidden in 2 houses. So the Scorpio planets, which not too long ago we were dealing with all that intense Scorpio energy, it's like hidden now. So the Scorpio people, I would imagine, Scorpio people are doing a lot of inner work right now. So if you know anybody, or if you're close to anybody with major Scorpio planets, give them space and let them do their thing. Scorpio already needs that. They already need that space to be quiet and inner and secretive. They don't want to tell you everything. But because the planet's hidden right now, and there's no transiting Scorpio, that means, especially for early Scorpio planets that are getting the hit from Pluto, they have to do their inner work. So they're going to need extra space. They're going to seem aloof. They're going to seem detached, uncaring, or selfish. But that's not the case. They just need that space, because what's going on is a volcano. The Scorpio there is volcano, and it will be especially true of people that are between 28 and 30 going through a Saturn return, early 40s doing a Uranus aspect. People 39, 40, 41 often gets topsy-turvy. Whatever original career or marriage didn't work, it changes. And then late 40s, you have another Saturn hit. So someone that's 48, 49, 50, if they have an early Scorpio or Taurus planet getting the square, they're going through another Saturn thing. And then the 50-year-olds, so anyone born in 75, so the 75 people and 74 people are coming up or just about to start their Chiron or Chiron return, which is just like Saturn, but it's the Chiron placement, which is about wounds. So anybody that you know that's 49, 50, or 51, they are in it. They are in the Chiron, and it will pass by about 52 or 53. It'll be painful. They'll hit they'll really feel like they're middle-aged. They'll feel like they're a 50-year-old will feel like a good part of their life is over, even if they're going to live another 40 years. It's so different than 40 or 45 astrologically. The 50 is enough of an arc astrologically that with Chiron and revisiting anything from childhood, that it will feel like, whoa, that stuff is way behind me. So those people will go through it. If the 47 and 48-year-olds, 76 and 77 people, they're not quite there, but they will be in about a year and a half. You're going to see them going through major changes with Chiron. And that will also indicate possible moves or changes of career, depending on where that, that Chiron, the Chiron Taurus people, where it comes. So there's a lot going on there. Definitely a lot. But let's see. Carolyn says, yay, Maurice. You're good. Oh, thank you. Yep. So so I just want to reiterate. So this is the last Sag live stream. Next week we'll finish up Sag a little bit. Maybe I'll mention a few more celebrities, and then we'll talk about Sag and Capricorn. But again, my live streams are weekly here. It's been 2 weeks now at 8 p.m. So for now, I think I'm going to keep it at 8 here on YouTube. Also follow me on X, Astro_Scoop. I'm also on Instagram, Astroscoop7. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Still, 80% of people are not subscribed. So if you could, please sign into your YouTube account, your Google account, find Astroscoop, and click all or personalized on the bell. Then you'll get the notifications however you want those. And if you want to donate, again, I'm on Venmo, Astroscoop, or also PayPal. You can leave me a message if you have any questions or anything, and I truly appreciate it. But thanks again to India and Algeria, which are my 2 top countries right now, and they comprise 61% of my views. That's 6 out of 10 people for several hundred views in a week or whatever. So that's a lot of people. So I really, really appreciate that. And then the U.S. is number 3 at 6%. So thank you, United States. You're hanging in there with me with the Astroscoop. We're growing, but we're getting there. So thanks so much, and have a great week. And we'll obviously have one more live stream before Christmas. And stay safe and be yourself. We'll see you next week.